Welcome to the Mike Miller Show.
Happy Friday, folks. Happy Friday, Jessica. I always say that I say both of those as if you're not one of the folks, but, you're kind of like with me. So, yeah. So anyway, happy Friday to everyone. This is the Mike Miller Show. I'm listening in the background, although I have it muted now. Shots fired somewhere outside the White House. Did you see that? They say 17th and E Street, and there's a Secret Service checkpoint there. Apparently not in a secure area, but there is a checkpoint. My buddy Zip at Weasel Zippers made a point to put up an RT News tweet that Obama was reportedly golfing, so he was not anywhere in the area. And Joe Biden was in a safe place. So anyway. No big deal, but of course, cable loves that stuff. Runs with it,
they'll talk about that for the next 3 hours.
Oh yeah, and they'll have 400 people on saying basically the same thing. So that's who they are. That's what they do. Just like the Egypt Air flight. We're going to get to that in a little bit and tie that to Mr. Donald Trump. Bottom of the hour, we have Dr. Hal Brown. He is candidate for Congress, representative, Missouri's 8th district. He will be joining us at the bottom of the hour. Talked with Dr. Hal the other day. Interesting point of view on taxes, one that I share. So we'll talk about him, about his race against the incumbent and why, and then we're going to have a discussion about taxes. So that'll be fun. Speaking of fun, Jessica, I've been thinking about talking about this for a couple of days. And being that it's Friday, I thought, I might as well kind of talk about it a little bit. But you've been following this story about first guy in the country to receive a penis transplant?
I did see that. That was interesting.
Yeah. Apparently everything is going well.
Well, that's great. I'm happy for him.
Yeah. Unlike that guy last year we had to talk about where it was actually reversed, right?
Yeah, that poor guy went in for a circumcision and they cut a little too much.
No, and he said they just basically cut it off. And of course they said they didn't, and he went to court. I think, dropped trial, and then, we didn't do it. Well, who did? But anyway, that's here or there. I did not follow that trial, so I don't know how that was resolved. But anyway, this guy, 64-year-old Thomas Manning from Halifax, Massachusetts, underwent this, it says a 15-hour transplant operation.
Wow. Spanned
May 8th through part of the 9th. The organ, it says, came from a deceased donor, which that's good news.
Yeah, it didn't come from that guy earlier.
Before. Because that's not like, you donate a kidney if somebody needs one.
Yeah.
That's a different deal.
Mm-mm.
That would have to be, if it were a relative, that would be true love right there.
Yeah, I think so.
The doctor, Dr. Curtis L. Citrullo, plastic and reconstructive surgeon, says it cautiously optimistic, but it is uncharted waters because it's the first time this has happened in the United States. There have been two other penis transplants in the world. One of them was in China, I believe. Did not go well. It did not take, if you will. And then there was another one. I'm trying to scroll down. This thing's a whole lot longer than it needs to be. I think it was in the Philippines, and it was successful. And the guy actually fathered a child later on.
Wow, I did not know about
that's obviously we're talking about it because of what it is, but that stuff is pretty amazing when you think about the stuff that they can do.
Oh yeah, 100%. That is really cool.
Yeah, South Africa was the one that was successful. And the recipient, that was in 2014, the recipient later fathered a child. They suspect that this guy will begin to use things properly as it relates to urinating and so forth in a very short period of time, and then within weeks or months, he should regain, that whole thing
That
as well.
function.
So,
Well, I hope the best for him. That's great.
no, me too. And again, I'm not making fun of it. I
No, I'm
find it
not
interesting.
either.
I was reading there's this, some people call him a quack, and I did not plan to talk about this, so I will just mention it in passing. But there is a fellow, this is in Europe, I believe, who says, and he's laid out this extremely complicated process that he believes he can do a head transplant. And to me, that's actually a body transplant, if you think about it.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
That would be
But
a
any,
body transplant.
yeah, I mean, it's not a head transplant; it's a body transplant. But at any rate, so medicine always fascinating. But I remember clear, but well, I won't go there because you know how old I am. Um, one other thing that's kind of funny because we got a couple little Trump stories we have to get to, but so the Blaze. That's Glenn Beck. I'm not a Glenn Beck fan. I used to listen to Glenn Beck way back in the day when he was Glenn Beck, instead of this self-aggrandizing prophet who desperately attempts at every opportunity to remain relevant and in the public eye. But anyway, on the Blaze, the headline, see the quote, wholly inappropriate final exam question about Trump that got a Florida teacher suspended.
Oh.
Florida man, only it's a teacher. Here's the question. This was article in the Palm Beach Post. Question: if Donald Trump becomes president of the United States, we are A, screwed, B, screwed,
Oh gosh.
C, screwed, D, screwed behind a really huge wall that Mexico pays for.
So did a teacher
Yeah.
actually did
Oh,
that?
yeah. He got suspended.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well,
Principal
I mean,
was not,
it's
and the
crazy.
words wholly appropriately, wholly inappropriate
Yes.
that I quoted were Principal Cheryl McKeever.
Mm-hmm.
She said specifically the exam materials contain inaccurate content, irrelevant material, unprofessional use of language, inappropriate use of language, and why did she say? Well, I guess unprofessional and inappropriate, two different things. Use of language and contain content outside of and not consistent with the curriculum for the Law Academy. This was at the Palm Beach Lakes High School Law Academy. Didn't know there were such things as high school law academies. That's pretty cool.
That, yeah.
Now, the guy is defending himself, and he says that it was just a joke. He says it was a funny question. Malik Lay is his name. He said, I'm not pushing a political agenda. I don't see why that would be offensive. And then he says they all tie into the classroom discussion. Really? So,
Well, I'm
yeah,
sorry, but if the roles were reversed, I feel like he would be very upset if somebody was like, hey, having Obama president is A, we're screwed, B, we're screwed. I think he would have a different opinion.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm guessing he also wouldn't think it was funny.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that. That's a good little Friday story. But people, remember we used to do these stories all the time where on the old show where California there would be students I remember were asked to write an essay on how the Jews in Israel, the Zionists, if you will, were similar to the Nazis in Germany. I mean, you see this stuff all the time, completely disparate topics. But as soon as they get caught, they apologize, and then somebody from an official from the school comes out and says, "Well, that's not really in line with the way we do things here." But there has to be an environment in education where these people think, "I could probably do that," and I guarantee you, to your point, let's pretend that Malik were a conservative. I bet he wouldn't think that would be okay with the school administration to put something like that on that test about Barack Obama, to your point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree.
Anyway, so Donald Trump even showing up in exams at law academies. Speaking of Donald Trump, we have a short clip. Okay, so this Egypt Air Flight 804 goes down in the Mediterranean. All signs point I don't even know that we can say all signs. It's highly likely that this was a terrorist attack, right? A bomb planted. I mean, they've done computer animation on how the plane turned left and then right, or right and then left, and then it did a 360, and then it fell, and boom, and there was no communication with the flight deck and the whole bit. So indications strongly suggest that it was a terror attack. But rightly so, officials in multiple countries reserving judgment until the facts are in, right?
Yeah.
Until the evidence is collected, which is the appropriate thing to do, and that's the way it's always done.
Yes.
Well, there's one guy who's already figured it out, and we have a clip of that guy letting us know. Let's listen to that.
It's a terrible thing, and he essentially shouldn't be running for office. He doesn't have the right to run for office. And I'm saying to myself, what just happened about 12 hours ago? A plane got blown out of the sky. And if anybody thinks it wasn't blown out of the sky, you're 100% wrong, folks, okay? You're 100% wrong. And it's getting worse. And, today I was watching one of the networks, and they had this great guy from the FBI on. And he was talking about what happened with the plane. It was like amazing. And I didn't know. I never met him. I never saw him before on television. And he's going back and forth about how bad it is and how bad it's getting and how we're losing control and how we don't have a president that knows what he's doing. And then at the end he said, let me just tell you something. Now, I don't know this man. He said, the person that knows what's going on, the person that understands what's happening is a guy named Donald Trump. What?
Whoever I did not, because I put this story up on IJR earlier. I did not, didn't have time, first of all, but track down who he was talking about and what he said. And I'm sure, I mean, Donald stretches things, and he generally only lies about something he gets caught doing. But I don't think he would just make that all up out of whole cloth, but I'm guessing he maybe took it out of context and presented as that Donald Trump is the only guy who knows that this was a terrorist attack. Because as we know, it's impossible for Donald Trump to know that.
Yes, 100%.
Can't be known. He can suspect it, and he could bet his entire fortune on it, but he can't know it. So for him to say 100% guaranteed, anybody that doesn't believe it, you're wrong. Let me just tell you, right?
Yeah.
100% wrong.
Mm-hmm.
He can't make that statement accurately. But you know what he's doing, right?
What?
He's betting on the come. He knows that what I just said, and what everybody else is saying, he knows that there is a high degree of probability that it was a terrorist attack.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So he's putting all his chips on that card. And then when it finally is proved that it was, he's in a position to say, see, I told you. See, this guy's not stupid.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what he's doing. I mean, I just find him a bit disingenuous when he does that kind of stuff. But yeah, so then he also, this was last night. He was talking somewhere in New Jersey, campaign event, doing his standard stump speech, and he got into that. And then he issued a statement later. It wasn't a tweet, just issued a statement later last night, and went after Hillary about it. And he says, quote, this is in the statement. This was actually a written statement. Quote, and by the way, ask Hillary who blew up the plane last night. Another terrible but preventable tragedy. She has bad judgment and is unfit to serve as president at this delicate and difficult time in our country's history. I mean, all of that might be true about her judgment, whether or not she's fit. The old 3 o'clock in the morning call. I mean, you had her aides at the State Department in some of these emails that were released along the way talking about how she gets confused often and she takes naps and they have to wake her up. I mean, that kind of stuff all may be true. I think it's an extremely cheap shot to say, ask Hillary who blew up the plane last night.
Yeah.
Right?
It is, but that's totally his...
That's totally his Donald Trump shtick.
Yep.
this thing is going to be, I say it almost every day, but this thing's going to be so much fun. I mean, I'm thinking that they could do like some pay-per-view thing.
I'm waiting for the debate. Yeah, for sure. I think it's going to be an
Well,
interesting time.
and he's already said numerous times. He goes, everything. So I'm going to, call out Clinton, call out Bill for his, transgressions, and call out her for enabling. He dropped the R word last night. I put this up as well. He was on, this will shock you, I know, but he was on Sean Hannity's show. This was actually night before last. And so they're going through a list of, well, they were talking about the, did I talk about this? I don't think I talked about this Wednesday because I just wrote this yesterday. But so he was ragging on the New York Times, which, and it was a hit piece, and rightly so. I mean, kudos to him for doing it, or I mean, rah or whatever, because it was a hit piece. That's all it was. And he goes, they should be going after Bill Clinton. And so Hannity stops him and he says, do you think that's fair game? Of course, then Hannity answers his own question as Trump's cheerleader and explains why it is. So Hannity's listing, he's going, the this and that and groping, and Trump interjects, and rape. And that was in reference to Juanita Broaddrick. I mean, I think it was like 1999 when she finally came out with a rape charge against Bill Clinton, and has been trumpeting that ever since. So it's going to be, it's going to be fun. I mean, it's just going to be, like I said, it's going to be damn near pay-per-view quality stuff.
Oh, totally.
And you just wonder how she's going to react. She's going to try to stay above the fray and be presidential, but it'll be interesting to see if he can rattle her during those debates. They asked, have you seen Bill Clinton lately in clips or anything?
Not in like the last few months, but
have you seen him? I mean, and this goes back further than the last few months, but where he just, particularly when somebody's asking him a question or he's getting ready to answer or he's listening, how he just like lets his mouth hang open.
Yeah, I think he's having some elderly issues.
And he's only, what is he, like 68? Something like that?
I don't know. I thought he was older than that.
I don't think he's old. He's not 70 yet. He's just, the fellow is not aging well.
No, but didn't he have like 2 heart surgeries too and all that?
Yeah, I guess so. Anyway, somebody was trying to get him to respond to Trump comments he's made about him. And he was kind of walking, but it wasn't going to stop, but listening to him. And he was kind of had a goofy smile, vacant smile on his face with his mouth hanging open. And they asked him if he had any comments. And he said, no, I think the people are smart enough to figure that out. So, I mean, we'll see, but it's just going to be so much fun. I just can't wait. That's the only kind of redeeming thing. You got to cry among the tears, because we're screwed either way. In my
I think so. I think that's been the case for a while now.
There's a story on I don't know where, the Washington Post. This is in WAPO. That this is not relevant, but it kind of it is to the extent that Trump refuses still to release any of his tax returns, and he hides behind the audit thing. The IRS has come out, as if anyone should trust them, but has come out and said, no, it's perfectly fine to release returns that aren't under audit. He won't say which ones are under audit or which aren't. But WAPO did a post, WAPO in an article, Trump's income tax returns once became public. They showed that he didn't pay a cent. This article surfaces a 1981, so this goes way back, report that includes tax information about him. And state records show that he, in 1978, 1979, reported a negative $3.8 million negative income, a loss, if you will, I'm sure capital losses on real estate. And he paid zero taxes. He had just a couple of years previously told the New York Times he was worth $200 million. So, I think that the waiting game is around why isn't he doing it? Mm-hmm. Of course, you have all the Trump-a-loompas now. In fact, one of my faves hit me up on on Facebook thread earlier about, why is it anybody's business, and, blah, blah, blah. The advanced rationalization that these people, the hoops that they jump through
yeah, I mean,
to make excuses for this guy are hilarious.
I hate the hypocrisy on both ends. And I remember a lot of these people were the same people that were like, why won't Obama release this information? Why won't he release his tax information? Like, and the birth certificate thing and all that.
That's exactly what one of them said to me this morning. She said, well, why is that tax return important when nobody cared about Obama's citizenship or his birth certificate? I said, I'm out. When you get into the goofy nonsense, I'm out. But yeah, I don't need to talk about that. And and I said this is because I tend to know what I'm talking about when I write stuff. I mean, I don't wing it. I said every presidential candidate since 1976, both parties released tax returns, right? Mm-hmm. One of them came back.
What?
Well, Reagan only released one of his. Okay, that's one more than Trump released. So
seriously, oh my gosh,
it's just hilarious. They just crack me up. And you know what? Who cares? I mean, to the extent that I don't think there's anything sinister in there. You have people talking about, well, it's going to, possibly may unveil dealings he had with organized crime and so forth. Although I wouldn't be shocked given the way that organized crime, heck, even to an extent, I would say Indianapolis, but Chicago, but definitely in New York City in the past, has controlled lots of stuff with the unions and whatever. I mean, we know. I think it's more something that is embarrassing to him.
Or yeah, like he's not worth whatever it is that he says he's worth, or something.
Well, and that'd be hard maybe to determine by tax return, but just like this story, he rails against the loopholes and whatever, and if it comes out that the dude never pays taxes, right? Mm-hmm. Because of the way that the real estate laws and so forth have worked in the past. So you used to have, I don't get deep in the weeds, but in income, historically you have three buckets. You have investment income, you have earned income, obviously it's the first bucket, earned income, investment income, and then passive income or losses. And, who knows? I mean, maybe, hundreds of millions or millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars in write-offs or depreciation of properties and so forth. Legal, right? I'm suggesting he broke any laws, but I think that something in there may just be embarrassing to him. That's my gut.
I'm sure that that's the case. I mean, that he's someone that is very prideful, to say the least. So I think anything like that would be a huge thing for him.
He did say, just to kick away from him in a second, but he he said last night, did you see where Hillary came out and said she wants to make Bill Clinton her economic czar because he was so good at it? Did you see that story?
Trump's, but that's great.
Yeah, Trump. Bubba says it's his idea, but anyway, Trump said last night that he thinks maybe Hillary wants to put him in charge of economic issues to keep an eye on him. Quote, to keep an eye on him. So
I like that. That's good. That's a good one.
I think that is. Okay, I got to get into just for a couple minutes because this set my hair on fire. I wrote this several hours back. Charlotte Observer, right? Leading newspaper in North Carolina. Operative words here being North Carolina. The whole transgender bathroom thing. Editorial board. Charlotte Observer. Let me just read my headline to you because this encapsulates it. And as you know, on IJR, we hate clickbait headlines and headlines that promise more than they delivered. And there's a bunch of them out there, and there's a bunch of dumbass clickbait sites that people go find stuff on that is totally crap, and then they put it on their Facebook page as if it's true, and all the lemmings that are too lazy to even research themselves, oh my God, I can't believe that, and they share it. We don't do clickbait stuff, headlines. All our stuff is true. I mean, our stories, but we do like to kind of veil just a little bit. So my headline says, North Carolina newspaper blasted for, and then this is in quotes because it's contained in the story, truly sick advice to girls about boys in their locker rooms. So in this editorial, in the Charlotte Observer, well, let me just paraphrase it and then let that sink in, and then I will read you the quote. Here's my opening paragraph. A leading North Carolina newspaper has some advice for young girls who might be distressed over seeing male genitalia in their locker rooms, : it won't be nearly as awful as you might imagine.
Okay.
Yeah. Here is a chunk, in part, verbatim. : this is what the Obama administration nudged the rest of the country toward Friday. Of course, it's referring to his letter, in effect, threatening to withhold federal funds, or that lawsuits just might happen if they don't open up, right, federal or public schools across the country, if they don't open up bathrooms and locker rooms to whomever based on their chosen gender. So here's what, and again, this is what this references. : this is what the Obama administration nudged the rest of the country toward Friday. Yes, the thought of male genitalia in girls' locker rooms and vice versa might be distressing to some, but the battle for inequality has always been in part about overcoming discomfort, with blacks sharing facilities, with gays sharing marriage, then realizing it was not nearly so awful as some people imagined. That's their logic for why this is okay. Yes, little girls, you may now and then, and they admitted in the, well, yeah, that might happen, but doggone it, it's worth it. Because that's what civil rights is all about. I found that disturbing.
I do think that's like, I mean, I don't care about the whole bathroom thing.
No, I know. We talked about it. We'd have to get there. But I mean.
But at the same time, I'm like, in the locker room situation, I just feel like there should just be stalls for everything. Like, then you're not just changing. I knew when I was in PE and all that, I never changed in the locker room. I always changed I always went to the bathroom and changed because I'm like, I don't want to change in front of people.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody. I didn't care who it was. I was just like.
Except now they could follow you in there. So I'm kidding, but yeah, no, I know what I know.
Yeah, in the stall, they can't follow you in the stall, but yeah.
No, I know. But Twitter went nuts. Sister told you. She writes. In fact, she's got something up today for us. She writes on our on our journal page, which is our opinion page. Her tweet: "Good to see Hot Air's Jazz Shaw also weighing in on that absurd Observer genitalia editorial." Another one from Black Scatter: "What the hell is wrong with you people at the Charlotte Observer? Truly, you're sick." That's where I grabbed the truly sick quote for the headline. It goes on and on. Here's something interesting. This is a tweet. I don't know who it's from. It doesn't make any difference. But there's a graphic included, kind of a blue, sky-looking thing with the words superimposed. "Why are trans women's fears of male violence in bathrooms justified, but women's fears of male violence in bathrooms are mocked and derided as mean, phobic, and bigoted?" I think that's a fair question.
Yeah.
And then the paper gets into their position that the notion that bathroom laws constitute a threat. They call it Republican political fiction. And let me read one more quote from the editorial. "Those safety issues are political fiction. Non-transgender men wouldn't have been allowed in women's bathrooms under the Charlotte ordinance that HB2 killed, and the 200 or so cities with similar ordinances have had no incidents involving bathroom predators." Well, they may have picked some cities where that's true. I linked to, it was on Breitbart. I tend not to like to link to post-Andrew Breitbart, but to the contrary, and the link is contained in the words "multiple examples of impropriety involving males entering female bathrooms, including in public schools." And you click on that link and it goes to the Breitbart site, detailed 25, and all of those 25 are linked to stories around the country, from schools to, the equivalent of Target or whatever, all kinds of stuff going on, all kinds of stuff. So, and again, we're about out of here for the half hour, but this editorial it drove me insane.
I can understand that because I was a little bit like, what are you doing?
Yeah, speaking of insane, we're under 30 seconds. We're going to take a break, and Jessica is going to ring up Dr. Hal Brown, again, a candidate for Missouri 8th District. We'll be right back.
Would I be a good man? Would I be true? True to myself, be true to you. The devil is...
Doug, I never thought I could go back to school, but when it's this easy, it fits.
I'm right there with you, Jackie, taking classes, watching lectures in the living room on the iPad. It's not hard.
I can be a mom, make dinner, get my classwork done, and not miss a moment with my family. It's amazing.
Yes, it is.
Hey, it's Jackie Velasquez, and if Doug and I can do this, you can do this too. Higher education with Liberty University Online.
Find out more about completing your college degree at the world's largest Christian university, Liberty University. Get all the details right now. Grab your cell and dial pound 250. When prompted, say the keyword Liberty University.
Training champions for Christ since 1971, Liberty University Online. Find out more about learning online. Dial pound 250, then say the keyword Liberty University.
Liberty University Online with hundreds of degree programs to choose from. Call now, pound 250. Say the keyword Liberty University.
That's pound 250, say keyword Liberty University.
Hello, I'm Matt, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is Hillsdale President Larry Arnn on the continuing relevance of the Constitution.
Many argue today that the Constitution is outdated because it addresses problems peculiar to the 18th century. Some parts of the Constitution do read rather quaintly. Consider the injunction against titles of nobility in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution. But is that so outdated? The purpose of the injunction is to prevent the government granting special privileges to some for partisan reasons. This strikes at the heart of the rule of law. The crony capitalism so common today is a place where the government bestows favors and tax dollars on some businesses to give them a leg up over others. This is exactly the kind of thing the Constitution was meant to prohibit. The Constitution is not so outdated after all.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.com.
Welcome back to the Mike Miller Show. I am joined, as promised, by Dr. Hal Brown. He is a congressional candidate in Missouri's 8th District. I want to know where that is. We're going to find that out. I have a bit of an idea, but we're going to talk to Dr. Hal. And I want to know why is he running? He's challenging an incumbent. And we're going to find out why he's challenging Congressman Jason Smith. So, Dr. Hal Brown, welcome to the Mike Miller Show.
Thank you for having me, Mike. It's good to be with you this afternoon.
So, and it's good to have you. So we were talking, you're out and about, you're in the Ozarks. You guys are campaigning as we speak. Give me an idea, give the folks an idea, where is the 8th District in Missouri, given that any of the folks listening that aren't from Missouri have any clue where that's going to be. But where is the 8th District?
Right. Well, we're, as you say, we're in the 8th Congressional District of Missouri, and it's in the southeast corner of Missouri. There's 30 counties in our district. It's a fairly large district. We have about 700 to 750,000 people in the district. We're south of St. Louis. We really don't include Columbia, but we include Cape Girardeau and Sikeston, Dexter, Rolla, Hillsborough, a lot of the western counties, Poplar Bluff, West Plains, Houston, those sorts of things. So it's a fairly large district, and it includes all of southeast Missouri down to the Arkansas line.
And you live in Cape Girardeau, home of the Limbaughs.
That's correct. I live in the home of the Limbaughs, Cape Girardeau, Missouri.
There we go. So you come from there's some good people where you live. So tell me, of course, we're going to get into why you're running and why you think that you would be a better candidate for your district than Mr. Smith. Is this the first time you've ever run for office?
This is the first time I've ever run for office. I have never sought elected office previously. The reason I am doing so now is I fear that our country, unless we change course, is headed for a disastrous ending. As you well know, it has been 15 years since the United States Congress balanced the budget. 2001 was the last time we had a balanced budget. In large part because of this, we have amassed a $19 trillion debt. That's a figure that most people have a hard time conceiving of. I did not say 19 million, and I did not say 19 billion. I said 19 trillion. That's 19 with 12 zeros. We have had Republican majorities in the Senate and in the House for the last 2 years. One would think that with Republican majorities, we could balance the budget. But last year, we were $400 billion in the red. This year, we're going to be $500 billion in the red. To me, that means we're heading the wrong way. So although we do have Republicans in office, it is my contention that we don't have the right Republicans in office, and that's why I'm running. As many of your listeners know, last year we paid about $251 billion as interest payment on our debt. Now, this has nothing to do with the principal. We haven't paid any principal down since 2001, but it costs us a large amount of money, as I said, $251 billion just to make the interest payment on our debt. And by going deeper in debt every year, that figure is going to increase. Our children have to pay that debt, and their children and their children. So succeeding generations of Americans are going to be saddled with an unbelievable debt legacy, and I don't think that's fair. That's why I have decided to run for Congress and try to take it upon myself with other like-minded representatives to make a difference. Now, a lot of people will say one person can't make a difference in Congress, and I would say to them, watch me. If you think one person can't make a difference, I would say you have the wrong person, because someone who is appropriately motivated to get something done in Washington, I think can get something done. If you look back to the time of Ronald Reagan, when he met obstacles in the Congress, he would simply go over the head of Congress. He would go right to the American people. He would express his opinions and his plans for America's future clearly to them. They would respond by contacting their senators and their congressmen saying, yes, we agree with Ronald Reagan. We want to take the country in the direction he is leading. And if you don't follow, we will turn you out of office. That's exactly what we need to do right now.
You know, and I don't know how many times I've said in the past, because I'm a huge Ronald Reagan fan, and he did exactly what you just said, Hal. He had just an unbelievable capability to go around, over, beyond the media. Remember him sitting in the Oval Office, and he'd have the simple charts, you know, and he connected with people. Fortunately or unfortunately, the only guy that seems to be doing that at the presidential level right now is Donald Trump. And if we have time, we'll talk a bit about him. So let me ask you, let's don't go back all 15 years. I mean, we know the last time the budget was balanced, Paul Ryan was involved. And do you I don't understand. And we've talked on my show in the past, and just go back to 2014. I mean, the Democrats got their butts handed to them in the midterm. And I was of the mind that the Republicans maybe didn't win so much as the Democrats lost. But we had John Boehner, we had Mitch McConnell. They were presented with an opportunity, a second chance, in my opinion, at least a second chance, to finally show the country, okay, we will stand up for conservative values. And that includes budget issues, immigration, Obamacare. I mean, it goes down the list. But by January, you would have thought it was the Republicans who got their butts kicked. Why do they do that?
Well, I think that they let the opposition frame the issues, whereas we should be framing the issues. And a lot of times they will let the other side ask the questions. Let me give you an example. You know, we will talk about, we'll get toward the end of the year. They have not submitted a balanced budget, and the media will start talking about shutting the government down. I mean, that absolutely terrorizes Republicans. You know, we're out there like a flock of grazing sheep, and we see this figure come across the horizon, and we think it's a lion, but it turns out to be Barack Obama. Now, I would submit to you that Barack Obama is no lion. And Republicans and Americans are not sheep, but we're acting like it. We need to take control. We've got control of both houses of Congress. We need to act like we have control. We have to do something with it. But the American people are sick and tired of electing people who say they're going to do one thing, and then they settle down in Congress and don't do anything. You know, they curl up in a corner and kind of go to sleep. We submitted a balanced budget, you know, last year that was vetoed by the White House. But instead of doing something about that veto, going to the next step, which is all of your viewers, I'm sure, aware, in Article number 1, Section 7, it clearly states that if Congress passes a bill with a 2/3 majority in both the Senate and the House, that bill becomes law, regardless of whether the president agrees with it or does not. He cannot veto a bill that is passed with a 2/3 majority. Now, did we try to get that done? No. We sat back and just declared defeat. You know, we said, I'm sorry, we can't do it. Well, in the House, we have 246 Republicans. That means out of 189 Democrats, we needed 44 of those to give us a total of 290. 290 is 2/3 of the House. If we got 290 votes, that bill passes the House and is not subject to presidential veto. Could we do that? No. I think we can put people in the House, and that's why I am running to try to convince at least 44 members of the House who happen to be Americans and Democrats that they should vote not to saddle their children and grandchildren with an additional $500 billion a year of debt legacy. Now, why we can't do that is beyond me. I don't understand it, and that's what's primarily motivating me, you know, to run. And with the question that you raised about why don't the Republicans act like they've got control of both houses of Congress, I haven't the foggiest idea.
Well, but you know what? You've already hit the nail on the head in two ways. A, the Republicans allow the White House to set the narrative, and maybe even more importantly is their total fear of the media. They are scared to death, in my humble opinion. And I'm not running for office. I just pretend to know what I'm talking about when I talk on this show and when I write for Independent Journal Review. But having said that, I think that John Boehner and company, Mitch McConnell, all those kind of mealy-mouthed, you know, I hate the word kind of establishment, but establishment candidates or politicians, I think they're scared to death of the media.
Yeah, I think they are too. And, you know, they need to make sure that the questions which are asked of them are appropriate questions. As we said, you know, just a few minutes ago, the appropriate questions are, why are we not balancing the budget? Not why are you threatening to shut the government down? That's just trying to distract us, to try to mesmerize us with this little side issue. The major issue is we need to be fiscally responsible and just balance the budget. If we did that, we wouldn't be talking about shutting the government down. We'd be talking about doing our fiscal duty to represent the American people, and that's all there is to it. Why they can't stand up to the media and to the other side is absolutely beyond me, but they can't. They haven't, and it doesn't look like they're going to.
No, by the way, I am looking at both your website and Jason Smith's website and Dr. Hal Brown's website, obviously halbrownforcongress.com. You guys need to go there and read his positions on stuff. And I don't care if you live in Missouri, okay, but this is the kind of conviction that that folks like us who supported Ted Cruz need to get behind. Now, having said that, let me ask you a question. And I've only talked to you 2 times. So you're a stand-up guy, and I'm not going to ask you to hammer Congressman Smith, nor probably would you. But having said that, I'm on his page, his congressional page, right? Taxes.
Right. And
it almost reads, the first part is if you had written it, based on what you just said. The nation's debt has surpassed a staggering $17 trillion. The deficit is a result of irresponsible spending in Washington and tax increases and so forth. See, this is, and the reason I bring that up, this is kind of a quintessential example of, here's a guy that's saying this stuff, and he may mean it, but apparently you're a whole lot closer to it and know a heck of a lot more about him and his record than everyone else listening combined. You seem to think he doesn't mean it. So is this just an example of people going and saying stuff and then going there and not following through?
Oh, absolutely. You know, it's fine to give lip service to an idea, but many members of Congress right now, they decry the debt as if they weren't in Congress. They act like they're running for a position in Congress, whereas in reality, they're members of Congress. You know, you have a seat at the table. It is your privilege, but your responsibility to do something with that seat at the table. You can actually affect change in whether we balance or don't balance the budget. But they act like they're vying for a seat at the table. Come on, you're already there. I'm trying to get a seat at the table, so it's okay for me to say these things. These guys already have a seat, so do something with it. What I'm saying is, you give me 2 years in Congress, and I will do something with it. We will convince a 2/3 majority of the House of Representatives to do exactly what our constituents want us to do, which is to balance the budget. We don't want to talk about balancing the budget, and we don't want to talk about why we didn't balance the budget. We just want to balance it, and that's all there is to it.
You know, you make a great point, because I suspect, I don't know what the percentage would be, but I would guess a majority of the folks in Congress in the House are always thinking 2 years down the road, right? The minute they get elected, I got to run again in 2 years. I got to kind of keep that in mind, and that's unfortunate. And I don't hear you suggesting that Mr. Brown goes to Washington, that he's going to think like that.
Well, right. You know, and a lot of people are really becoming disenchanted, you know, with politics and with politicians. I will go out and speak to many people, and they say, you know, I've had it. I've voted for people before, and I suspect you're going to be just like every other politician I've voted for and I have sent into office, and they do nothing. They don't produce. They leave me with excuses, but they don't give me results. And what I'm trying to say is, you give me 2 years in Congress, and we will provide results, because I am a member of that small group of people whom I describe as citizen legislators. We're not politicians. I've never been a politician, and I almost consider it an insult to be called a politician, just because of the, you know, reputation that has developed over the years. We're trying to go up there for several years, do the will of the people, represent our constituents, and do something so that this country gets back on the right track. That's all we want. You know, I will go up there, and my record will stand in 2 years. If I should be elected, and if I so choose to run again, I will say, here's my record. Have I balanced the budget? Yes or no? Do we have a fair tax enacted into law? Yes or no? Have we passed term limits? Yes or no? And I think you can go just by that record. And if people like those results, they might choose to send me back. And if they don't, they should bring me home.
And and I have to just kind of bottom line, here's what's disheartening about what you just said, in a way different than you might suspect. As I'm listening to you, and of course I'm on board with everything you're saying, because I'm hearkening back to what was at the time the phenomenon of the rise of the Tea Party, right? And limited government, balance the budget, reduce the size of government. And where are we now, right? The status quo controls D.C. One would have thought, with the disillusionment, at least this conservative one would have thought, with the disillusionment with John Boehner and Mitch McConnell and company coming into 2016, you know, looking back 2-3 years ago, and then kind of fast forwarding to maybe a year ago, that a Ted Cruz, right, a true conservative, that folks would rally around someone like that, particularly people who, Tea Party and the like, which have. But I know Tea Party members that are so far in the tank for Donald Trump. I mean, I want to talk about the fair tax with you, but can you, I mean, in just a couple minutes, can you give me your take on this whole phenomenon of Donald Trump and how that happened?
Well, you know, I think that what has happened with regard to the Donald Trump movement is that this disillusionment and, frankly, this anger and this just being fed up with the results of electing people who say they're going to do one thing and don't do it, and who see the direction of our country going exactly opposite to the way it should be going, and they're saying, you know, we don't need any more politicians. And you may like Donald Trump or you may dislike Donald Trump, but the fact of the matter is, Donald Trump is not a typical politician. He is a businessman. He says what he thinks, and sometimes he will say things that makes people mad. But you can always count on one thing. Donald Trump doesn't wait to get spin doctors to tell him what to say. He says what's on his mind, and it's out there. That's
whether you like it or not.
A little bit later.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? People like that. People like someone who's candid, who's a straight shooter. They may make mistakes, but you can count on Donald Trump to tell you what he thinks is really going on in his mind. And the American people are ready for that.
Yeah, and maybe because I want to move into to your tax ideas because I share those as well. But maybe we have you back, between, because your primary is what, August 2nd, right? So have you
August
back
2nd,
sometime
right.
between now and then and talk again, because I want to get into this whole thing with you. But I would like you, and I asked you this the other day, to do this because you will articulate it clearly. Everybody talks about a flat tax. You mentioned fair tax, which I'm a fan of. I suspect that there's lots of folks in the country who really don't even understand the difference. Can you just kind of, and they're completely different, but can you just kind of lay out, just hit the flat tax, which is easy, and then explain the fair tax to folks?
Right. Well, the flat tax, and I was formerly a pretty vocal proponent of the flat tax, but the flat tax is simply a means of decreasing the tax rate but keeping the income tax system in place. And there are many advantages to that, but there are also some disadvantages. The fair tax is an entirely different means of taxation. And what it does is it does away with all forms of income tax, whether it's personal income tax or corporate income tax, dividends, interest, capital gains, et cetera, plus it does away with all payroll taxes. And it replaces that system of taxation with a national tax on consumption. This is paid on all new goods, not used goods, used cars, homes which have previously been purchased. There's no tax on those items, but it's a consumption tax on all new items and on all services. Now, in addition to that, there is a monthly prebate. And what a prebate is it reimburses up to the poverty level all the taxes that people living in the United States would pay for all these goods and services, because there's no exceptions to the fair tax. In other words, you pay taxes on everything, whether it's medical care, food, clothing, housing, et cetera, et cetera. But keep in mind that the fair tax, under this system, you get your whole paycheck. You don't have the payroll tax taken out. That 7.65% that is taken from every paycheck, that stays with you. That goes in your pocket. The federal income tax, the withholding tax, that is the same way. You don't get that taken out. You make that money. So if your paycheck is, say, $500, you get almost $500. Nowadays, it may be $400. And the numbers go up as your wages go up. So people are going to have a lot more money in their pocket with the fair tax than they did with the flat tax. And just as icing on the cake, the IRS goes away. No one will ever be bothered by the IRS again.
Right. Let me jump in real quick, but that's a great point, because we've heard people through this cycle saying we have a flat tax and we do away with the IRS. No, you don't with the flat tax, because even if it's a flat 10%, you still have to have someone collect that money and make sure that it's being paid. You do not do away with the IRS with a flat tax. With the consumption tax, the fair tax, you do. And kind of quickly here, but as Hal said, you pay for things you buy new. Let's define the you. That's not just us listening. That's, dare we say, illegal immigrants buying things new. That's vacationers from Europe and Canada. That's everybody that buys stuff in the country.
That's exactly right. I mean, people talk about broadening the tax base. You can't broaden the tax base any broader than with the fair tax. So if you're looking to broaden the tax base, this is your system, as you just said.
And it certainly has its detractors, but I started paying attention years back. Neil Bort, I'm sure you know who Neil is. He actually was around before
Sure.
Rush, but he was huge, and you know this. He's a huge proponent of the fair tax. And I used to read the stuff on his site all the time, from the detractors and then from those that would knock down those arguments. To me, it just makes complete, total sense. It has for years. But of course, the $64,000 question is, some view it as so radical that, do you honestly think it can ever happen? And the IRS is gonzo. Do you really see it happening?
Well, it's certainly not going to happen with the current makeup of Congress. You know, there's a guy from Georgia, Rob Woodall, who sponsored this bill in January of 2015, and there have been 70 co-sponsors in the House. But do you think that any of those people who have co-sponsored that legislation, including the incumbent whom I am opposing, do you really think they want this bill enacted? Because if it's enacted, they lose power. They don't get to set the terms of the income tax. They don't get to set deductions and exceptions. They don't get to interact with the lobbyists, and therefore the lobbyists continue to have control. With a fair tax, the lobbyists lose a great amount of their control, and the American people gain a lot of power back. So we're moving power from Washington back to the states and to the people, which is exactly the direction it needs to go.
Totally agree. Talk to me about immigration. What's your immigration position?
Well, you know, I believe in the immigration rules that we have established. I think that the people living in the United States should decide the immigration policy, which we have done. I don't think that despite the fact that we may have 11 million or however many million immigrants we have here, that we should allow them to determine immigration policy. A lot of times people say, well, you know, there's a lot of people here, they've come here, they want to live in the United States. That's fine, but the people who get to determine the conditions for those people from foreign countries who become U.S. citizens are U.S. citizens. The people who want to become U.S. citizens have to abide by the rules that we have established. We really shouldn't change that. We ought to abide by the rules that are currently in place. It's not fair to those people who have abided by the rules and are waiting patiently to become U.S. citizens to let people just jump in front of line in front of them, and they've played by the rules. You can't let people do that. You can't let people say, I don't like the rules, I'm not going to play by them, and then everybody who does play by the rules gets penalized. That's not right. It's not fair. We shouldn't do it.
You know, with all such talk about, and I have strong views as well, but, you know, we talk a lot about, you know, who goes in what bathroom and the like. But in my humble opinion, the just two critical issues in terms of keeping Hillary Clinton out of the White House and putting the right people in Congress are immigration. This country is changing demographically before our eyes, and I'm of the mind that at some point in the not too dear future, it's going to become even more difficult than it is now for a Republican to see his or her way to 270 electoral votes in this country. And then, of course, you have to throw in appointments to the Supreme Court. But this is a critical election coming up, isn't it?
Yes, and for the reasons that you just delineated. So this is a critical year. People have to really become engaged, familiarize themselves with the issues, and quite truthfully, they need to familiarize themselves, with the candidates. Prime ministers of England have said that it's wonderful to have the vote, but to really have the vote count, you have to have a choice of candidates and you have to have a choice of issues. And I would say that this year we have a choice of candidates and a choice of issues, but people who are going to vote need to familiarize themselves with these candidates and the issues and vote appropriately.
Okay. Unfortunately, we're out of time, and I want you to come back. I want to talk about healthcare with you and other things. Okay, so we have HalBrownForCongress.com. I like your website. What else can people do to get involved, or just to if they want to follow you and see what's going on?
Well, we would welcome people to our website. It's, as you say, it's Hal Brown for Congress. We welcome all the help we can get. As you know, it is extremely expensive to run a congressional campaign. We have a campaign slogan which says, "Give me 5. Give me 5 minutes of your time. Please bring 5 friends to the website, and please donate $5 to help us support this campaign." We would really appreciate any help that those of you in the 8th Congressional District or elsewhere, could give us.
And you're also a better buy than Bernie Sanders, because he wants $27 and you only want 5.
I think we're much more conservative than Bernie Sanders. Yeah.
There we go. Well, you won't give us free college, but that's a whole other issue. Of course, I'm being facetious. Okay, Dr. Hal Brown, thank you for coming on. And again, the primary in the 8th, in Missouri, is August 2nd. Lots of time to mobilize folks and the like. And I'd like to have you come back between now and then if you'd be so inclined.
I would enjoy that. And Mike, I appreciate you having me on this afternoon.
Dr. Brown, good luck to you. Talk to you down the road.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. See, Jessica, and again, I am biased. I'm not a reporter like some of the folks pretend to be on cable news. And but the guy, these are the types of folks. So I know we're out of here about, but yeah, like people like that. Got to have Dr. Brown back. This is a Mike Miller show. I think we need to get out of here, don't we?
Yes, we do.
All right. Have a great weekend. I'm going to casino tonight. We'll talk about that on Monday. The Mike Miller Show, Jessica Jane, and we'll see you Monday. Thanks for listening. Tell your friends.
To get away.